Well, hello, I'm Tony Vlahos for ExecuNet. Thanks as always for tuning in. So, what types of leaders are organizations looking to hire right now? And what are they not really interested in? For answers to these questions and others, I turn today to Joel Koblentz of the Koblentz Group, which is a firm widely recognized for successfully recruiting senior leaders for public companies, investor controlled enterprises, and family businesses globally. Joel is an ExecuNetSelect recruiting partner and frequent guest on these Tony Talks. Joel, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you again.
It's a pleasure to be on a Tony Talk.
Oh, thank you. So, Joel, it's the final quarter, of course, of 2021. We're nearing the end of a second long year for all of us. Tell me, please, what is the state of executive hiring right now?
Actually, Tony, this comes out of a partners meeting that we recently had, and one of our senior partners said, I've never seen so many people come on the market looking and going off the market so quickly. But what we're looking for is changing. It's subtle from the last conversation we had, 6 months ago. But what I'm about to share with you, I think might be helpful to the listeners. In last month, probably no different than any other month, I spoke with about 20 some CEOs. And they come from public companies, private equity controlled, and one or two were family. And only about 5 or 6 of them, as I count back, were actually clients of our firm. These people came to me because they're a bit flummoxed and they wanted perspective. So they hear my name, they know what I do. They rang up and we set a discussion. And it's the first time that I've seen the tremendous vulnerability that the CEOs have. Okay. And after listening to this, I said, well, what's in common with all of this? What's really changing? And what's really changing is, think of it like an Oreo cookie. Okay. The leadership teams are all in the center. The organizational structure is at the bottom cookie, and on top is the CEO's bosses, whether they be owners in private equity situation, or they're the board of directors or a family council. And these CEOs are feeling the pressure from the top down and the bottom up. And they're feeling it at the same time that they're being asked to deliver results that they can't even see much forward to deliver. So what are they looking for? Well, as I started to boil this down, it came down to thinking about the relationship between leadership, the outcomes that they're really trying to seek, how they look at the processes to seek it, and ultimately how they deliver on those platforms that they either are working with or trying to change. But here's some interesting statistics about change. All the research now shows that over 70% of companies that define going through a transformation fail. They fail. And it's because the alignment, if you want to use that word, doesn't fit the operating structure. Okay. So you end up with leadership on one hand that's trying to drive through a business structure, deliver on strategies, meet priorities, get to outcomes on one hand. And then you've got at the bottom of the Oreo, you've got not invented here. You've heard me say this before, but it's even more prevalent now. Not invented here. Why should we do it? There's high anxiety to change, so I'm staying in my swim lane. Okay. And at the top, the pressure on the boards from the outside. First of all, we all know private equity firms are paying many times multiple what they used to pay. Okay, so they're going to hold these things longer, and they're going to need leadership to drive it, and they're getting pressure from their investors to deliver. Okay, same with boards. Now we have this. Now we have the pressure of ESG, and we've got the pressure of shareholder and stakeholder rights. Okay, and in addition to that, we still have activist shareholders, and we still hear about them trying to pull apart these companies, bring these companies together, merge these companies, refinance these companies. And they've got more power than ever. Look at the capital available to them. and the price of that capital, which is still pretty darn cheap, never been cheaper, really. We'll see what the Fed does in the next few days. But all of those things really, when you start to move the pieces around, what does it mean to what we're looking for? So to your question, with that big backdrop, here's the answer to the question is simply every company is unique. But these leaders are under such pressure that they can no longer hang on to what they believe the tried and true. They can no longer believe that the people that got them there are going to get them there. Okay, they no longer can believe that if they want to see the future, that they have to have an expected value of perfect information that's within 1 millimeter of the center point. Okay? Those days are gone. So those CEOs that I talked with, what they absolutely said in common is they see this as an extraordinarily opportune time to better identify dealing with the what ifs. But they got to be able to deal with it. So any candidate that brings perspective today and can talk about the what ifs, this may change, and shows the adaptability to make change is one thing they're looking for. The second thing they're looking for, historically, is not to, let me say it this way, is not to value the marks on the wall. Oh, Tony did this, Joel did that, good, bad, or indifferent. Today, there's no time for that. So when they select leaders, they want leaders who are going to say, okay, we didn't know the future. It went this way or it didn't go this way. If it didn't go this way, how quickly can we take corrective action? So they want people who are quick to ascertain the real issue and be able to move on it. Mm-hmm. There's a laser focus of investing their time and resources in an adaptable culture, okay? And it's put a lot of pressure on human resource people. For years and years, human resources, if you talk to CEOs, they would always tell you how important leadership was, okay? How important people were to them, okay? But the way that they handled the function, very little was strategic. And I'm not talking about the tactical back to work, or should we work at home, or should we not? Should we vaccinate people? Should we not, if they want to come back to work? Those are tactical issues. They sound strategic, but they're very tactical of what needs to be done today. Because tomorrow, who knows, right? But using talent and developing talent is something these CEOs know they have to do, because they don't know which way the future is going to be. So if you think about it in baseball terms, we're looking for utility players, people who can play a number of positions, okay? Because we don't know where we're going to have to place them on the field. At the same time, these boards are putting a lot of pressure on the CEOs and their teams about succession planning. How do you define succession? At a time when we were continue to walk through what you've heard me talk about, foggy windows. Well, it has to be about adaptability. It has to be about utility. It has to be about breadth of experience. It has to be about perception of the world in which we live. So anybody who can present themselves that way, regardless of the role, is somebody, I think, that has a step up. Okay. Now there are in middle management, or let's say lower upper management, the competency probably outweighs the perception, the perceptibility. Okay. When you get to that next level up, the level that we normally work, perceptibility far outweighs competence. And what it does is it changes the whole dynamic of what fit and culture is in a company. So that's what it's a long-winded answer, but try to put it into perspective for you and the listeners.
No, it's a complete answer, and you've anticipated many questions I plan to ask. So I'm going to skip right ahead to another type of inquiry, Joel, which is traditionally this time of year is known as the start of the holiday job search season for executives and non-leaders alike. What could be different this year, if anything, about that search? Is it a time to move forward? Is it time to approach your search differently if you're just launching it? What do you advise our audience does differently?
Well, I can tell you, we thought that our year of confirming new engagements was probably over in middle of October. Okay. But I can tell you that it has not stopped. It has not stopped. I will tell you that the smart thing that I think people can do today, because of the way I describe utility players, is instead of working on the resume and having every action verb in the English language and some that haven't been created, I think it's as important, if not more important, to come up with 2 or 3, no more than 3, well, no less than 2, but certainly no more than 3 or 4 themes about one's career, and write it in a bio form. And that plus the resume gives the reader an understanding of how worldly this candidate is in a world that's spinning in different directions, how adaptable they are, what kinds of situations have they shown through of, okay? Have they shined through? And that helps, I think, employers, and it helps people like myself understand this candidate and the value that they'll bring. The biggest challenge this time of year is getting a hearing, because everybody's, thinking about next year. They're doing their budgets, they're in strategic planning sessions, and unless somebody leaves them, they're probably not going to move very fast to replace them. And they're not going to replace them either, because nobody really wants to pay relocation or can relocate candidates at this point of year. Kids in school, holiday season. But second of all, they don't want to pay makeup bonuses. They don't want to pay these big sign-ons. And with the valuations that we have especially with the public companies, those can be pretty steep in my world. So I think the best thing to do is to really develop the bio, look at the resume, stop pitching yourself with every action verb, okay, and begin to have those conversations about your themes. Nothing may happen this year, nothing, okay, but it does position you when the gates begin to open, and they haven't really closed, as I mentioned, to have those conversations. The second thing I would tell you to do this time of year is identify those people not that really like you. Okay, that doesn't work. In fact, there's an old axiom: those you think will help you the most just don't. Okay, so the smarter move to me is to identify no more than, let's say, 50 influential people, okay, in your business life. Maybe people you've worked with, maybe people you've advised. Maybe it's people that you've worked with on a not-for-profit board, but are influential in the business world. And once you have your themes, explore, get some time with them. They'll have time this time of year, maybe, as we close out the year. But try and get some time with them and explore those themes, not your resume. Nobody wants to answer the question, tell me about yourself. It's a dead question. It's a dead question in this environment. So if somebody asks you that question, say, well, I could take you through my background. I'm happy to leave it for you. But there's 3 themes that run through my background in these types of companies. Bang. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then you get on to something that really can be helpful to you. And that's what I would do, especially this time of year. But it would work any time of year, but especially now. Especially now.
Terrific. So one last thought, Joel. You have, of course, a long-standing relationship with ExecuNet. We've done many talks together. Tell me why you continually draw executives, particularly job seekers' attention to ExecuNet. What do you tell them about ExecuNet that is really meaningful to them and to you?
Well, I have a history with ExecuNet. Its founder, Dave Opton, and I became friends when I was running the New York office of Egon Zehnder, one of the large search firms, years ago. So that has to be over 2 decades ago. And I spoke to an ExecuNet group in Stamford, Connecticut, way back when. And what appeared to me was that the world was going to move to people continually transforming themselves from one situation to another. When I was a kid and coming up through the university systems and what have you, if you had more than 3 or 4 jobs in your lifetime, boy, that you probably couldn't hold a job, was the thinking. Well, today it's exactly the opposite. The kids coming out of school today, if they play all the way out to their mid 60s, may have as many as 20 to 25 jobs. So what's valuable to me about ExecuNet is the way that the firm, your firm, helps people understand these transition points, helps people understand how to, networking is a dead word. It's another dead word, but it helps people build sustainable long-term relationships, not only with ExecuNet, but with each other. Many of these other organizations tend to have a relationship just with the firm, not and the individual to the firm to the individual. But ExecuNet allows individuals to really partner with one another, to share. And I think that's important because there's no fountain of knowledge that one can go to today. There isn't. If you want to read about any subject, if you study it long enough, you'll find out there's as many people thinking one thing as there are people thinking the other. And the idea of getting the mental acuity, if you're curious enough, I think ExecuNet provides that opportunity, which is rare, very rare. So that's why I've been supportive of it.
Terrific. Well, Joe, thank you again, as always, for making time and sharing your insight. I'm sure our audience will be eager to hear what you have to say about the way things are now. And we'll certainly have you back in short time to talk about it again, because it always changes.
We'll see if I'm right, huh, Tony?
Thank you again.
My pleasure.
Bye for
Have a
now.
wonderful day. Bye-bye.